Good evening, friends, and welcome to Late Night Horror Stories and True Crime. You've found your way back to the shadows, and tonight, you'll wish you hadn't. Down in the swamps of southern Arkansas, where the fog hangs low and the trees whisper your name, something ancient waits. Locals speak its name in hushed voices. Others pretend it never existed, but those who've seen it, they never sleep the same again. This isn't legend. This is not folklore. This is a true horror from the depths of America's forgotten woods. So lock your doors, kill the lights, and listen closely, because the Boggy Creek Monster is real, and it might be watching you. People like to say Fouke, Arkansas, is quiet, peaceful, that the worst you'll run into is a cottonmouth curled up on your porch steps. But I know better. My name is Clayton Ross, and back in the summer of 1973, I was a wildlife officer stationed near Miller County, patrolling the back roads and swamps of a place most folks forgot existed. Boggy Creek wasn't on any of the tourist maps. It was a stretch of swamp and pine forest that looked the same for miles, low mist hanging above the water, mosquitoes thick as rain, and cypress knees poking out like crooked fingers. It smelled of rot and life and death, the kind of place that didn't welcome outsiders. Hell, sometimes I wasn't sure it welcomed the locals either. The first whispers came in late May. One of the Carver boys swore he saw a man-shaped thing watching him from the trees while he was fishing. Said it had red eyes, big ones, like car tail lights. He was 14, a quiet kid, and not the kind to make up ghost stories. His daddy brought him in to make a statement, more out of curiosity than concern. I remember the kid trembling like he'd been struck by lightning. Then came the mutilated animals. Not just chickens or goats, big things, cattle, a couple hogs. One old farmer named Reese Tallman found his prized sow torn in half like someone had wrung it out like a dish rag. No knife marks, no gunshots, just brute force. Whatever did it snapped her spine like a toothpick and left her there to rot. I chalked it up to a rogue bear at first, maybe a cougar. But bears don't rip fences out of the ground, and cougars don't walk upright. I found tracks in the dirt that made my skin crawl, barefoot but massive, easily 17 inches long, 5 toes, no claws, but heavy, sunk inches deep into the mud. And the stride, too wide for a man, too even for an animal. It was late one night in early June when I saw it myself. I'd parked near the edge of the swamp, engine off, listening. The crickets had gone silent. That's something you learn out here. When the night creatures stop singing, something's wrong. Then I heard it. Not a howl, not a scream, but something low and guttural. A growl that vibrated in my chest, like the hum of a diesel engine rising to a wet roar. That's when the thing stepped into my headlights. 7, maybe 8 feet tall, black matted fur, dripping with swamp water, shoulders like a linebacker, arms that reached down to its knees. Its face wasn't fully animal, but it sure as hell wasn't human either. It had a flat nose, a heavy brow, and eyes like glowing coals. It didn't flinch at the light. It stared through it, and then it grinned. I don't remember starting the truck, but I remember peeling out of there so fast I left a groove in the mud. I didn't tell anyone, not officially. You start talking about monsters, they take your badge and your gun. But I started sleeping with a shotgun by the door, and then the Simmons family got hit. They lived in a small ranch house off Boggy Creek Road. Husband, wife, 2 kids. Around midnight, something tried to break in, shattered their window, left deep gouges down the siding. When I arrived that morning, the husband looked like he hadn't slept in a year. Said it wasn't a man, said it wasn't a bear. It had fingers, long ones, and they reached right through the blinds. We found black hair caught in the glass, not fur, hair, coarse and greasy. I sent it off for analysis, but nothing came back conclusive. They told me it was undetermined primate, which is bureaucratic for, we don't know what the hell this is. I should have quit then, should have transferred out to Little Rock or Fort Smith, but something kept pulling me back, some instinct that whatever this was, it wasn't finished. It was watching, waiting, and it was getting bolder. By the end of June, one of the kids from town would disappear, and after that, there'd be no more denying the truth. Something was alive in Boggy Creek, something that shouldn't be. July in Arkansas is a cruel joke. The heat sits on your chest like a bag of wet cement, and the mosquitoes come in like they've been summoned. I kept my truck stocked with bug spray, jerky, and a loaded 30-06. Not exactly regulation, but nothing about this case was. The morning Jesse Matthews vanished, I was eating breakfast at Miss Gloria's diner. I'd just finished pouring syrup on my pancakes when the radio crackled. The dispatcher's voice cut through the sizzle of eggs and gossip. Unit 12, we've got a missing child. 8-year-old male, last seen near the tree line behind the Matthews property. My fork hit the plate. Jesse's mother was near hysterical when I arrived. Her fingers trembled as she pointed toward the woods, said Jesse had gone to check on his squirrel trap, said he should have been back in 10 minutes. It had been 2 hours. No sound, no scream, just gone. I called in a search team. Bloodhounds, deputies, volunteers. We canvassed every inch of the forest from their back fence to the edge of Boggy Creek. And then I found it, a drag mark. It started behind a mossy log near one of Jesse's overturned traps. The dirt showed signs of struggle, boot prints, then a sudden smear as if something had grabbed him by the legs and yanked him into the trees. Nearby, a branch had snapped nearly 7 feet off the ground, fresh, sap still wet. Then I caught the smell, rot, wet fur, copper and sweat. I raised my rifle, heart punching in my throat. For a second I swore I saw movement just past the palmettos, a black shape, tall and hunched, watching me. I blinked, and it was gone. The dogs started whining. One of them laid down and refused to move forward. We never found Jesse. Not a bone, not a shoe, just his squirrel trap, bent in half like a paperclip. That night, the town shifted. People started nailing their windows shut, keeping their kids inside. I'd never seen fear spread so fast. Rumors turned to whispers, whispers turned to silence. But the Boggy Creek Monster didn't stay silent. A week later, I was called out to a hog farm about 2 miles north. The owner's name was Dale Kirby, a tough, no-nonsense Vietnam vet. Said something had gutted 5 of his pigs and torn apart his fence like it was made of matchsticks. I found the carcasses. Jesus. It was a bloodbath. Entrails strung over branches, ribs splayed open like a book. One of the pigs had its jaw ripped completely off and shoved into the mud. But the worst part, whatever did it, didn't eat them. It displayed them, arranged them in a pattern, some kind of circle, with sticks and bones pointing inward, like a warning or a ritual. I told Dale to lock up and sleep with the lights on. He didn't argue. That night, I sat on his roof with my rifle, hidden behind a stack of tarps. The farm was silent, too silent, the kind that makes your ears ring. At around 2:30 a.m., I saw it, emerging from the trees like it was born of shadow. Huge, muscular, with long matted hair hanging in strips. Its arms hung low, swinging as it moved. When it stepped into the moonlight, I saw its face. Not ape, not man. Some twisted cross between the two, snub nose, thick brow, flat teeth stained yellow, and its eyes, they glowed faint red, like dying coals, not from reflection, from within. I raised my rifle and fired. The bullet hit something. It let out a roar that shook the night and bolted into the woods. I followed the blood trail to the edge of the swamp before I lost it in the fog. I collected samples. Blood that wasn't quite right, too dark, too thick. I sent it off to Little Rock for testing. It came back unidentifiable. No genetic match on record. That was the last straw for me. I went to the sheriff, laid out everything. Photos, plaster casts, blood samples. He looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "Clay, you've been in that swamp too long. Maybe take a break." I didn't take a break. I doubled down. Something was living out there, hunting, stalking, and now it had taken a child. And I was going to find it, no matter what it took. The heat never let up that July. Even at night, the air hung thick and wet, like you could drown standing still. The crickets stopped singing. and the frogs kept silent. The swamp was holding its breath. So was I. Word had gotten out. Maybe I let it slip. Maybe the carver boy ran his mouth. But by mid-month, a group of local teens decided they wanted to see the monster for themselves. Kids always think they're immortal, invincible, until something shows them they're not. 4 of them took off with flashlights, beer and bravado, camped out near a bend in the creek where the cattails grow tall and the mud sucks your boots down like quicksand. They didn't ask for permission, didn't tell their parents, just disappeared into the trees after sundown. Only one of them came back. His name was Robbie Jinks, 17, blood-soaked, shirt torn to ribbons. His face looked like it had been clawed by a rake. We found him wandering along Highway 71 at 3 in the morning, screaming about the thing in the trees. He wouldn't stop shaking, wouldn't stop crying. We had to sedate him to keep him from hurting himself. When I finally got him calm enough to talk, he kept repeating the same words. It came out of the water. It grabbed Mark. We ran. It howled like a dying man. It broke Tasha's spine. I heard it. We found the campsite around noon. The tent had been shredded like paper. Blood soaked the grass and bark. One flashlight was found 30 feet up in a tree. The cooler was crushed flat, beer cans split open like fruit. But no bodies, just drag marks, deep ones, leading toward the black water of Boggy Creek. The sheriff ordered an official search. We brought in dogs, divers, even a chopper from Texarkana. Nothing. No signs of the other 3 kids. That night, I sat on my porch, rifle across my knees, and listened. The wind was dead still. Then I heard it. A scream, long, high-pitched and wet. Not an animal, not human either. Something in between, something wrong. It echoed from the direction of the swamp, bouncing off the trees like a taunt. I knew right then. It wanted us to hear, wanted us to know it was still hungry. The next evening, I joined Deputy Lane for a routine patrol. We drove through the back trails behind the Tallman property, dense woods where headlights barely cut the darkness. We stopped when we saw something in the road. A deer, or what was left of one. Its front legs were gone. Its belly was torn open, organs spilling like soup. But the strangest thing was the eyes. They had been scooped out, cleanly. The sockets were hollow. The carcass was still warm. Lane went pale. Jesus Christ, what the hell would do that? Then something struck the side of the cruiser, hard. The whole truck rocked like we'd been sideswiped. Lane screamed and fumbled for his shotgun. I caught a glimpse through the window, just a blur of fur and movement. I opened the door and stepped out with my rifle raised. That was my first mistake. It stood there, not 10 feet away, chest heaving, its eyes locked on mine. Something hung from its hand, something long and limp, a denim pant leg. Blood dripped down onto the leaves. Before I could fire, it let out a roar so loud my eardrums rang. Lane fired blindly, hitting nothing. By the time we got our bearings, it was gone. But it left something behind. A shoe, size 10, blood-soaked. The name Tasha written inside in black marker. We didn't find her body. Didn't find any of them. But Robbie Jinks never recovered. He hung himself 6 months later in his family's shed. His note said, "It watches me at night. It knows I lived." After that, the town started talking about evacuating, but no one wanted to believe the truth. They blamed drugs, blamed wild dogs, blamed hysteria. But I knew better. Something was in those woods, something old, something that killed for pleasure, and it was only getting more aggressive. After the attack on the teens, I stopped pretending we were dealing with some undiscovered animal. This wasn't just a cryptid. It was a predator, with intelligence, malice, and a thirst for carnage. And it was no longer hiding. Locals started fleeing, shops closed, school delayed reopening. A fog settled over Fouke, not just in the air, but in people's eyes. Fear changed them, changed me. One morning in August, I drove out to the Howard place, an old hunting lodge near the banks of the creek. Old man Howard hadn't answered his radio in 2 days. I knew what I was going to find, but that didn't make it easier. The front door was off its hinges. The floor inside was slick with blood. Thick drag marks led to the back porch, where the body of Henry Howard, what was left of it, lay crumpled in a heap. He was missing his arms, both torn off at the shoulders. The walls were scratched with deep claw marks, and on the mirror in the hallway something had been scrawled in blood. Mine. I vomited in the bushes. Then I called it in. The coroner's report didn't make sense. Severe trauma by unknown animal, he wrote. But I saw the look on his face when he unzipped the bag. He knew. We all knew. That night I called a meeting. 7 men showed up, all local, all armed, farmers, mechanics, even the town barber. We weren't experts, but we were angry, tired, ready to face the thing that had turned our home into a slaughterhouse. We entered the swamp around midnight. It was quiet at first, still, too still. Even the mosquitoes had gone silent. We moved slow, flashlights low. I carried my rifle plus a flare gun just in case. Billy Hanks brought a .45 and a jug of moonshine, said it was for courage. I didn't argue. An hour in, we found the first sign, a carcass, deer again, but gutted neatly, like a hunter might, except the heart had been bitten out. Not cut, bitten. Then we heard it. A low moan, like a foghorn underwater. One of the men panicked and fired into the trees. Big mistake. The roar that followed was thunderous. Then the trees moved. I'm not talking wind. I mean something massive charged through the brush, snapping trunks like twigs. It hit us fast, a blur of muscle and hair. I saw Ricky Dorsey go down, his throat ripped open before he could scream. Blood sprayed across my face. Another man, Pete Baxter, tried to run. The thing grabbed him by the back of the head and slammed it against a tree so hard his skull burst like a melon. I fired 3 shots, missed all of them. The rest of us ran, stumbling over roots and wading through muck. I dropped my flashlight but kept running until my lungs burned. We regrouped at the edge of the creek. 5 of us left. 1 man sobbed, holding his broken arm. Another was bleeding from the face. The moon lit the water just enough to show something floating. Ricky's body. His chest had been torn open. His face was gone. That was the last hunt. We never went back in as a group, and no one questioned it. The official report blamed a pack of feral hogs. Bullshit. Hogs don't climb trees, don't gut deer, don't arrange kills in patterns. I sent a final blood sample to a private lab out of state, paid for it out of pocket. The results came in 3 weeks later. DNA inconsistent with any known primate species. Possible contamination. Recommend destruction of sample. They knew something, and they wanted it buried, just like the rest of us. I left the service in 1975, 2 years after the swamp bled out those men. I didn't retire with honors. No ceremony, just handed in my badge, loaded up my truck, and drove north until the trees thinned out and the air didn't stink of rot and death. But Boggy Creek never left me. It stuck to me like sweat. In the dreams, I still heard the screams, still saw red eyes blinking in the dark. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and swear something was watching me from the tree line behind my cabin, and then the letters started. One arrived in 1982, no return address, just a smear of red wax on the back, and a single line written in thick, blocky ink. It walked through my yard last night. Took my dog. It smiled. No name, no town, but I knew. Over the years, more came. Scrawled notes from strangers across the South, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas. People describing the same thing, the stench, the roar, the glowing eyes. A few had photos, blurred, distant shapes that could have been anything. But I knew. Some of those people went missing after writing me. Others were found torn apart in their homes, the same 3-claw pattern carved into the wood or glass. I tried to warn others, wrote to the state police, the feds, even a producer from Unsolved Mysteries. They listened, they nodded, and then nothing. The files disappeared. I got a visit from 2 suits who told me to drop it. So I did. Until 3 weeks ago. I'd been living out near Mountain View, off-grid mostly. Small cabin, no electricity, just me and a shortwave radio. One night, just past 2 a.m., I heard something. Not heard, felt. A low thrum, like a freight train in the bones. Then came the knock, not on the door, on the roof. Something heavy landed on the shingles. I grabbed my shotgun and stepped outside, barrel first. My porch light flickered and died. And there it stood, not 20 feet from me, just beyond the gravel. Taller than I remembered, broader. Its hair was slick with rain. Its jaw twisted into something that might have been a grin, or maybe just hunger. I raised the shotgun. My hands shook. It didn't flinch, didn't charge, just watched, like it was studying me. And for the first time in my life, I understood something awful. It had never forgotten me. It remembered my face, and it had come to let me know that I would be the last. Then, without a sound, it stepped back into the woods, gone. I stood there for hours, the gun heavy in my arms, heart refusing to settle. I waited for it to come back. It didn't. I know now it wasn't just a beast. It wasn't a monster in the way people think. It was something older, something that knows it can't be killed. It doesn't just hunt. It chooses. It marks those who see it and lets them live, so they'll carry its legend forward like a disease, infecting others with fear. You're listening now, so it's already begun for you. Tonight, if you're near the woods, keep your windows shut. Don't answer knocks. And if you hear something breathing just outside your door, don't look, because once you see it, it sees you. You might be thinking the Boggy Creek Monster is just a story, that the screams were coyotes, the blood was an animal's, and the people who vanished just ran off. That's how your mind protects you. It builds fences. But deep down, you felt it, somewhere in your spine, in the silence between breaths. Because monsters like that don't disappear. They don't die. They just wait until someone new starts listening. So go ahead. Leave the lights on tonight. Pretend you're safe. But if you wake up to a smell you can't place, and your window's cracked open when you swore you locked it, don't call out. Don't move. Just pray that it hasn't marked you.